Good evening, Azeroth, and welcome to episode 163 of the World of Goldcraft. I'm your host, the Lazy Goldmaker of thelazygoldmaker.com. Welcome back to the show. If you're following along live, then make sure you post your questions in chat and I'll answer some of them at the end. If you're not and you want to be, then I record these at twitch.tv/lazygoldmaker on Thursdays, so tune in then. It's in the evening EU time, around 21-22 Central European time. So, before we dive into the podcast proper, I want to thank all of my patrons that support me on patreon.com/thelazygoldmaker. If you want to join us, then you can get access to my full TSM setup for both Shadowlands, Classic, Era, TBC Classic. It covers everything. Alright, so now we're going to go into the meat of it. I was watching a video for another game that I play. It's Escape from Tarkov. The game, I watched that the other day, and it really got me thinking about an interesting point, because the video was making the point that you as a normal player or someone who's consuming content to get better at that game, you're very, very, very unlikely to get as good as, say, the full-time content creator or someone who is really, really good at the game, someone who has the game as their full-time job. You're extremely unlikely to reach that. And this got me thinking about how good can you realistically expect to get at gold making in WoW, because that's of course my area, and my generally held belief has always been that anyone can get good at gold making. That's why I make content on some level, because I think I can help all of you guys to make gold, cap, to buy whatever you want in game. Now, obviously, there's going to be differences. I'm not going to say that everyone's going to do it in the same amount of time, or with the same amount of difficulties or lack of difficulties. But I've always believed that if you want it enough, it's attainable for anyone. But maybe that's not true. I don't know. Maybe I'm overestimating. So I thought I'd discuss. I've been thinking a little bit about this, and I thought I'd discuss a little bit about, obviously, why I think that is. And some parts of even how skill works in video games. Now, the number one reason why I think gold making is relatively attainable is that it's a game activity that essentially does not have a mechanical skill component. And that's usually one of the things that really makes a game or anything have a high skill cap and make it hard to master. And that's the reason why I'll never be as good as someone who plays a shooter like Escape from Tarkov full-time, or someone who does high mythic keys full-time in World of Warcraft. Because there's nothing to learn like the hard rotations or super high pressure situational awareness, or just the muscle memory of moving your mouse to aim correctly in shooter games. There's nothing like that in gold making. So there's nothing that's going to keep you back physically or mentally on that level, which means that it's much easier to reach the top, and it's much easier to get good at, because there's no physical skill required. And then they tend to be very effective barriers towards creating different levels of players and people who just can't actually compete. Obviously, if we're talking about first-person shooter games, younger people generally have faster reaction times. So as you age, you're going to have a harder time competing. And that's just what it is. But that's not really the case in gold making. That's one of the main reasons why I've always thought that it's attainable for everyone. Now, getting good at games or getting good at anything is more than just mechanical skill. Of course, there are other factors. In my view, there's a combination of knowledge, like knowing what things do, where items drop, what you can craft, why people might buy them. And then it's familiarity with the optimal patterns of play, like what is the optimal way to use that knowledge. Okay, based on that knowledge, can we devise optimal strategies? And then lastly, it's the ability to execute those strategies, right? And generally speaking, the ability to execute an optimal strategy is very easy to attain. It's very easy to learn how to execute a strategy in World of Warcraft through Trade Skill Master, other auction house add-ons. The true skill of gold making is just in the first two. knowledge about the game and the understanding, or the ability to synthesize, combine that knowledge, combine knowledge of different parts of the game into specific strategies. And these are the things that are really hard to acquire in terms of gold making. Loads of gold making content focuses on specific applications or how to execute in a specific market. So like an optimized farming route, or maybe a guide for a specific crafting market, which includes a finished TSM setup, such as I provide a lot of. And a lot of people are therefore, they get good at executing specific strategies, but they neglect the two earlier parts, like does this strategy work? What sort of knowledge about the game do you need to make this kind of strategy? And that's going to hold people back, obviously. But you can be super successful just by copying people. Due to the widespread nature, or current widespread nature, of gold making content, you can easily reach gold cap by just copying what other people are doing. There's people who have used my methods and gotten way richer than me. You don't actually have to be an expert on the game or about how to adapt with it, or even understanding the markets, if you have enough time to just execute already proven strategies on a consistent basis. So and Derpolicious is in chat, and he started laughing at the comment about some of you getting significantly richer than me, and he's not the only one. And all of this is essentially why I believe that anyone can make gold or get rich, if they bother spending the time. Now, there are obviously pitfalls and huge differences between how intuitive someone finds gold making. And that's where a lot of the differences show up. Because some people will be like, I've tried everything I've read on Reddit, it doesn't work for me. And then there are other people who go from being a novice to millions or even gold cap within the span of a couple of months. We see the entire spectrum of people succeeding or not succeeding. And I see both as well. I see people who succeed wildly using my methods, and there's people who struggle for weeks and months. And obviously there's going to be realm differences, but the same basic principles, the same basic patterns are going to emerge on pretty much every realm, because we're all playing the same game. Now, I think the main thing that people really struggle with is the knowledge part, and after the knowledge, it's the part of understanding the markets a little bit more than just knowing that, okay, this specific item drops in one specific spot. But it's about understanding the cycle of World of Warcraft markets and understanding why something could be profitable. As an example, if you just open your alchemy tab on a Monday in Tradeskill Master, it's probably going to show red numbers across the board. But that doesn't mean alchemy is unprofitable. If you haven't considered the effect of the weekly reset cycle, looked at pricing data across multiple days of the week, or if you don't even know how TSM calculates that profit, then you might be led astray, and you might think that this is a market that doesn't work, where it might be a market that could be very, very profitable if you do the correct calculation for profit. Now, obviously, I'm in a little bit of a privileged position for when it comes to gold making for multiple different reasons. I've generally taken quickly to these concepts. I learned my first gold making methods back in the original TBC. I have a degree in economics, and I've been doing gold making for 12 years, or 13, 14 years. And I also intuitively grasped Tradeskill Master, which is also something that a lot of people struggle with, but for me that was not a struggle at all. Now, that's obviously a potential drawback as well from making content, because I can't easily relate to players who have significantly less knowledge or less understanding of the gold making side of the game, in terms of understanding why items are profitable and why they're not profitable, why something is looking like it's going to be good or not, and less ability to connect that knowledge into some form of market intuition, which is something you will gradually work towards, and some people grasp that faster than others. Now, the good thing is, as I said, I believe all this can be learned. There's no real rocket science needed. As some of you will be aware, I keep my trade skill master settings deliberately extremely simple. I keep them as simple as possible, both for myself and for others. For crafted items, it's just sell items for at least 20% more than materials. Nothing fancy. That's really the gist of it. And for flipped items, it's sell items for at least 15% more than my maximum purchase price. And that's really like that. Those are the two main rules I use on the auction house. And everything else is essentially a little bit of fluff. Like outside of that, the trick is just to identify items you can craft or flip. You can do more sophisticated stuff. I have a couple of markets where I have a little bit more sophisticated setups, but generally I don't think it's worth it unless you just love tinkering with a complex TSM setup, or you're trying to reach some very, very incredible levels of scale on your gold making operation. I'm familiar with some people who's using it to great effect with a more complex setup. I don't though. The real important concept to understand is why people are buying certain items, because that's going to help you figure out what items are profitable. That's the most important thing. And then there are some other concepts that you should be familiar with, like the weekly cycle. Raids reset on a single day every week, and this is a huge driver for demand for a lot of things. Those days are the peak price point of every week for stuff like consumables, anything that people is going to buy to get into the next reset of raiding. This is both retail and TBC. This has been the case ever since they added the weekly reset for raids back in vanilla. The weekly cycle has been a thing. And then you need to understand why players buy things. Generally speaking, they buy things to make their characters stronger, either permanently through gear or an enchantment, or on a temporary basis through consumables, or to look cool. So cosmetics, that means transmog mounts, battle pets. But the most important thing to realize is that people spend way, way more gold on being strong than on looking cool. So if you want something that sells fast, then focus on max level markets that make other characters stronger. That's always where the gold is easiest to get to. Anything else is like, there are people making millions in transmog and cosmetics, but there are people making hundreds of millions in legendaries in just one expansion in Shadowlands. So I know where I'd put my effort in gold, and that's in legendaries. Those are the first two concepts I think you should understand, and then obviously there's more things and more details you can add on as you go. But I think that a lot of this is just going to come from experience with trying things in the markets. Do stuff, buy something that you think is going to be profitable, and then try to think about why it didn't work out if it didn't work out, or why it worked out if it worked out. And then just keep learning, and I think everyone can do it, because there isn't any hard conceptual things here. Everything is conceptually relatively easy, and that's why I think anyone can do it, because it's easily conceptually. You just need to sell stuff for more than you bought it for. There's no other secret, and there's no mechanical skill requirement. There's nothing that's hard to execute. Like, you just get Trade Skill Master and you bind the posting macro to something that's easy for you to to click a lot, and then you go ahead and click and post all your stuff to the auction house. So yeah, that's why I think that you can get, because I've seen people surpass me. I've seen multiple people surpass me, just using my advice, using my TSM settings, and just putting in more effort. And more than anything else, that is really going to be the difference. Just putting in some effort, and putting in some effort in some targeted learning, making sure that you're putting effort towards getting better, and not just using my TSM settings brainlessly and not learning or not understanding why it's working or why it isn't working. So yeah, that's it for what I wanted to talk about today. I think this is something I want to revisit, because it really got me thinking, and there's so much more to talk about here, but this was the end point for the discussion today. So if there hasn't been any questions posted in chat yet, so if you don't get any, then this will be the end of the episode. So yeah, thanks for listening or watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you leave a like down below if you enjoyed the discussion, or subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next episode. If you're watching this on Twitch, then I really appreciate it. Make sure you show up next Thursday as well, and we'll see you for another episode of the World of Goldcraft. Thanks for listening or watching. Have a profitable week. Bye, guys.